man? How you doing?
I'm good. How's everything?
Yeah, all right, man. I can hear your server back there. Is that your server?
Oh, no, it's my laptop.
Ah, okay. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. What's going on with your SCCM deployment and test?
Yeah, it's going on fine.
Yeah,
I mean, at the moment, I've deployed, you know, agent. I'm not sure. Did you get my email when I
I,
asked?
I think I saw it, but I saw it late. Sorry.
Uh,
It's something about
why didn't we use the standard group policy method?
there's so when I saw so there's no reason. So the only reason why we went for that or why I went for that was because uh I used that method before.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that there's too much of a difference between using like the normal group policy method rather than using the other method. I'm not sure that there's much of a difference. So the main difference is that the other one, so there's like kind of like a downside to using the other one. I remember now. So the downside to using the other one is that you can only use the command line switches for is this correct or is this incorrect? Yeah, you can only use the command line switches for um, client.msi. So
Oh,
I don't think, now I may be wrong, but I don't think you can use the command line switches for CCM setup.exe.
because I remember with the scheduled tax, you were able to use this local system account or
Yes,
network.
yeah. So I
Can
think
you do
I
that
think
with group
I think
policy?
I think so. I think he probably use local system account also. I think so. I think
Uh,
depending on how you deploy it, I'm not sure if it's gonna use. Yeah,
well, I'll test it again
yeah,
tomorrow. I wanted to try that group policy, but I was
yeah,
getting an error. Like I need to restart my server for the group policy to work, but every time I tried it, it
yeah,
didn't work.
yeah.
Well, something I wanted to test.
So it will work without you having. So there's like advantages. So one of the things that I think you should test is test if you can use, because when you're doing client deployment, you can either have um you can either have the system setup.exe switches and the client.msi switches. So
Okay.
you can have either. So it depends on. So test if you can use client.msi switches if you're using group policy method.
Okay.
Yeah, hello, sorry about that. Hello, Nicholas, how you doing? I know you've been you've been asking for the links and stuff since. You're doing something on OS deployment recently. You have to unmute yourself. So if you look at yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I've been sort of studying independently. I
Yep.
got certified a long time ago
Wow.
on Vista
Yep.
and haven't really done much since then. Never touched server, and then the education solutions
Yep.
provider company that I went to was like, yeah, try server, and I know nothing about servers, so it's been a really like sort of overwhelming experience, and
Wow. Yeah. So
a
what?
lot of the
Yeah.
training material that I sort of purchased online and so forth and found was not completely inadequate, but as
Yep.
somebody that's sort of new to server and doesn't have access to the software, it was
Yeah.
definitely overwhelming in a lot of aspects. But it's been a really fun adventure, like sort
Yep.
of learning to fill in the blanks. And I see that you guys are kind of sort of struggling with the same things that I've struggled
Yep.
with in terms of like
Yep. That's absolutely accurate.
supposedly it'll say that it works this way, and then you get
Yep.
into the software, and then
Yep.
it sort of responds slightly differently. So there's
Yep.
like a Microsoft way, and then the way that it works in a practical sense. So
Yep.
it's,
Yeah, that's
difficult
absolutely, yeah,
journey.
that's true in that sense because I was even testing one today and just testing the Microsoft documented OS deployment. And then, which it's not bad, they give you like all these steps to follow. But then once I started, then all the error messages started coming out. Then you get this error message thrown at your face, and you're like, hold on, this is not in the documentation. Then you have to find out what that error message is. Then you fix that, and then you go forward, and then boom, here's another error message. So yeah, It
Yeah,
does.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate this group
Yeah.
though. It's great. The work that
Yeah.
you guys put out there has been very helpful to me.
I know that's really nice to hear. So what exactly is it that so are you preparing to do something relating to OS deployment, or just you're just studying general server, Microsoft Server technologies? Is that what you're doing?
Well, I started a class to get an MCSA and then figured out that if I could pass the 7410, just
Yeah.
doing that alone would be a feat, much less the other two exams required for the full MCSA. So it's just sort of been an independent study. I've been unemployed for, a decent amount of time,
Yep.
so
Yep.
gonna get back in the game here.
Yep, nice one, nice one. Yeah, so yeah, that's a nice one. So, we got Taiwo here. So Taiwo currently works as an infrastructure guy. So we're a mixture of guys, maybe guys who are trying to, maybe get into IT, or guys who were in IT before, like yourself, but then are coming back to IT, or guys who are kind of like, service desk, but trying to get into IT infrastructure, or guys who are experienced infrastructure guys were trying to get certified. So it's like a mix of people, and then we try to make things as non-complicated as possible. So we don't try to use like a lot of complex terms to confuse people. So we try to make,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
try to
There's
make
a
it
there's
simple.
a lot of confusing jargon that I've found in a lot of literature. Like a print device is like the perfect example of that because
Yeah,
there's like technically a print device
yeah,
is a physical printer, but yet then
yeah,
all the documentation
yeah.
will
So
sort of
yeah, a printer is
intermingle
is what
between
you see
saying
on your
printer
computer.
being a
Yeah,
server.
yeah. A printer is what you see on your computer. A print device is different from the printer. So the printer is what a user clicks on and goes right click print. So that's the
Yeah.
printer, but it's different from the print device. So yeah, like all the yeah, they do have like all those stuff and everything. So yeah, wow, we do have a lot of people here. So we have Abdul again. Hello, Abdul, how you doing? And yeah, you're right, man. Yeah,
I'm fine. How are you, David?
yeah, very good, thanks. Man, I'm really surprised that all your girlfriends and wives allow you to be here today, man. I was thinking they won't allow you at all. But it's interesting.
Actually, before you joined the Hangout, you have to be some present, you know.
Yep, yeah, I understand perfectly. Yeah, nice
Yeah,
one.
something like something. Otherwise, you know.
Yep, yeah, nice one. Okay, I mean today what we're going to talk about today is operating system deployment. So we just want to talk generally about the technologies, Microsoft's solutions for that, in line with what we are studying. But here's one thing that I must throw out right at the beginning is that if you do the SCCM course, which I've done, the official Microsoft SCCM course, they'll present an operating system deployment method to you that you actually won't use in the real world. Now, even Microsoft recommends against it. Well, not against it. They recommend don't use this in the real world, but that's what they will teach you in the class. So, in case you take the course, what you're going to be learning is not what you're actually going to be using. So, for example, you take the course and they'll tell you, this is how to use Configuration Manager to do deployment. But if you go to their technical documentation, they will tell you it's advisable to integrate Configuration Manager with MDT, but they're not going to tell you anything about MDT. So, which was what Taiwo and myself struggled with. If Taiwo remembered that period, remember we struggled with that in the beginning because we were like, yeah, we have to use Configuration Manager, but now Microsoft are telling us integrate it with MDT, and we knew nothing about MDT. So, yeah, so that's like one of the things that I should probably just mention right off the bat. So let me share my screen. Just let me know when you can see my screen. Hello, Benji. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Tell your
Yeah.
wife I see her.
Yeah, she's right there behind me today. Because today's Valentine.
No, I think there's a good reason for that. Because if you have MDT, you don't need to buy SCCM if all you're buying SCCM for is imaging. So,
You can actually. So actually, what Microsoft will recommend is this: buy SCCM, but integrate it with MDT. That's their recommendation. So they don't recommend using just MDT. So, or they don't recommend just using SCCM. They recommend using SCCM, but integrate with MDT.
Right. I'm saying if people learn about MDT and learn
Yep.
how to use it,
Yep.
then they're not going to sell as much as CCM. So
Yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
we had old SCCM, and that's why I talked to you about. I was on 2008, but I did MDT and did all of our Windows 7 rollout for
Mhm.
1,500, computers at my last job. So
Yeah. So how did that work?
how do you?
Like
So you just build
like
a
doing
Pixie.
MDT, is it a single location or is it a multi-location company?
It's a single location
Yeah,
company.
that's why
So
you
all
can
I did was
absolutely.
I set up DHCP,
Yep.
put in my Pixie boot file,
Yep.
WDS. I
WDS. Yep.
would just make an image in MDT,
Yeah.
grab my boot WIM, stick it on there, make a task,
Hmm.
create it, and then, I would do all my drivers and
Hmm.
MDT and all that stuff. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah,
we didn't use SCCM for anything except for inventory, really.
yeah. So MDT can absolutely do that. Where it gets complicated is when you have a global environment, when you have like multi-locations. Because MDT has no distribution infrastructure. So, like for example, like where I currently work, we have offices in about 20 different locations. So to do that with MDT will be absolutely crazy. But with SCCM, where you have all your distribution points that are Pixie enabled already, so you don't have to put in WDS and stuff like that. So all of that, SCCM handles all of that for you. All you need to do is do the core management from your site server. So that's like so if you're kind of like a smaller business or a single location business, you can probably get away with using MGT with WDS and achieve the same thing and achieve zero touch deployment if you want. Um, but once you now become um, a location where you have to go across the wide area network, then it becomes a management nightmare to try to use solutions like MDT and WDS because then you have multiple. So if you have like let's say about 15 locations, you probably have to have WDS in 15 locations and you have to manage them separately for 15 locations. And that becomes like a management nightmare of you have to manage MDT across all these locations. I have to manage WDS across all these 15 locations. Whereas when you now use config manager, you can have it from a single location and then do the management of the other spare distribution point and all that. But then the one thing that they recommend is if you now integrate MDT with config manager, it gives you more functionalities. Uh, but then the distribution infrastructure is what configuration manager gives you. So MDT gives you like all those functionalities and features and all those scripts, but config manager gives you like the distribution infrastructure in the back end, which
Is it
will, yeah, carry on.
is that through WDS?
So it's through WDS, but then config
Okay.
manager actually manages WDS. So
Oh,
we'll
okay,
see where we
gotcha.
get there. So actually, so it's a single tick now. So you go to your distribution point, you have a single tick there that says Pixie enable this distribution point. And config manager will handle all the things of um, configuring WDS, putting your boot images there. You don't have to go, non-WDS, you configure it, you configure your DHCP settings, right? You had your boot image to it. Config manager will handle all that in the back end for you. All you have to do is just that single tick of Pixie enable this distribution point and config manager will take care of all that. So anyone in that
Okay.
branch office will be able to pixie boot instantly. They'll be able to get whatever boot image that and also a tick in the boot image where you can say, allow this boot image to be deployed from a pixie enabled distribution point, and you just handle all of that in the back end, and you don't have to worry about that. So that's what
Okay.
configuration manager provides. What MDT provides is config manager is limited, or the out of the box config manager functionalities is limited in terms of OS deployment. MDT is more feature rich than config manager, which is where we've
Okay.
seen we've seen a lot of admins struggle because you go for the training and you get training on the SCCM side of things, but then the MDT side of things, you have to kind of like figure out and learn by yourselves from articles online and documentations and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
in probably 2007, I did a deployment to about 300 machines or so as like a junior network admin, and we just used Norton Ghost for everything, which was a little bit simpler because we just got an image and then just had a third-party program. I think we were on 2003. We had a few 2008 boxes
yep,
that we were kind of upgrading to at that point in time.
mhm,
It was like a Microsoft Gold partner, so they always got new releases, and they were
mhm,
pushing out Vista to all these machines.
yep,
And it was, I remember it being a fairly simple process, and now it seems like everything is kind of almost more complex now that it's native as opposed to being like everybody using third-party programs to
yep.
deploy images.
Yeah, but there's another thing that I hope that we can touch on a little bit today also, in terms of OS deployment also going forward. So this only applies to OS deployment going forward, especially with Windows 10 going forward. Because what we could now achieve. So let me share my screen first of all. So in the past, what we usually have is this. So just let me know once you can see my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past, what we'll have, or not in the past, like currently, what we'll have is we have our clients, how many of them that we have in our infrastructure. We have lots of clients, and then you have your either MDT infrastructure, or your config manager infrastructure, MDT and WDS or config manager. So let's just say MDT slash WDS or config manager. Um, MDT, WDS, or config manager infrastructure, and your users will go out. So let's bring this one here. So your users will, or not your users, your IT, the IT department, you go out to, whatever supplier you want to use, and you purchase all these computers. So all these computers that you're buying, they already have the OEM version of Windows operating system that comes installed on them, right? So so your supplier brings that to you, whether your supplier is Lenovo, Dell, HP, or one of their other sub-suppliers, wherever you buy all these PCs, they have operating systems on them, and you bring them into your environment. That's typically what happens in many corporations. And then what you have to do is actually now it has an operating system fully installed on it, it comes installed with an operating system. What you now have to do as an admin is create your own images here. And then what you have to do is wipe out whatever is on this thing. So you basically wipe it out completely. You wipe it out completely, and then you now start afresh again to now deploy your own images. To now deploy your own images on this guy using MDT or WDS or config manager. Now deploy your images, and now that makes the whole process much more longer. Because now you're formatting everything, downloading images of like 2 to 3 gig, downloading the images, applying the images, then after that you are applying your applications. And now what Microsoft are pushing for going forward, it's not to use this method. So what they're pushing for going forward is something which we probably won't go into depth about it today, but it's something to start looking into if you're doing operating system deployment. They're called provisioning packages. And here's a good philosophy to adopt. It's one that I'm trying to adopt myself where I work. And the philosophy is if you can get away with using provisioning packages to do what you need to do, use provisioning packages. So what provisioning packages will allow you to do is this. So you have the same scenario where you have this hardware device that's been brought into your corporate environment, and this hardware device has sorry, there's a lot of echoes there. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I had yeah. So this hardware device, um, this hardware device has the OEM version of the operating system installed. But what you can now do is using provisioning packages. You don't need to wipe out this operating system on this guy. You could basically bring this device in with the OEM and basically customize it to be a corporate image without wiping out the existing operating system. And that makes it quicker. So the test I've done, for example, with provisioning packages, with I actually have a Surface Pro 4 behind me that I'm using for testing, and going from bringing a Surface Pro 4 into a corporate environment and turning it to a corporate device took about 20 minutes. Whereas if I went down the road of config manager, it's hours. I'm talking about hours. It'll probably be something not nothing less than 2 hours to get that device ready. But now within 20 minutes, this device comes into our environment, deploy a provisioning package to it, it converts it. If it's a pro, it converts it to an enterprise, uses the same image, installs the required applications on it, and it's done. Within 20 minutes, it's a corporate device. So if you can get away, now definitely there are some functionalities that you still need where you can't achieve with provisioning packages, where you need to wipe the device completely and put your own custom image. But if you're doing anything that has to do with deployment, start looking up this thing. So let me bring up this one. So start looking up provisioning packages. Windows 10. So start studying about them, start looking them up, start playing with them, because if you can get, again, it's not going to work in every situation. So again, we've mentioned this in the past. You can see the benefits of provisioning packages. Quickly configure a new device without going through the whole process of installing a new image. So it's not going to work in every situation, but again, the philosophy that I'm trying to adopt is that if you can get away with using a provisioning package to achieve what you need to achieve, then go with a provisioning package. So after throwing all that in, now let's get started with operating system deployment in Config Manager today. Does anyone have any questions regarding what we've mentioned so far? Any questions at all? Any questions about what we've mentioned so far before we move on to... You need to unmute yourself if you have any question. Yeah? Okay, yeah. Let's go ahead then. There are no questions. So let's
Oh,
wipe out... Yeah, carry on, Nikolai.
I actually have a question. So,
Yeah.
are those like the provisioning package? Are those like complete images that you could possibly mount and edit in DISM?
So they're not complete. So the way you create provision packages, this thing they called Windows Image and Configuration Designer. So I actually have a video that I did on it on YouTube, but it's more of like just a demo, quick video. I didn't really show like a lot of features. So let me, if I go to, so it's more of like an XML file, but it's really
Oh, okay.
powerful. So if I go to YouTube and I go to my YouTube channel, yeah, um, and I go to videos. So there was one when I was talking about Windows 10 in the enterprise using provisioning package, this one, and it's really simple because what you're basically doing is, yeah, you're using this tool here called Windows Imaging and Configuration Designer, and you're using it to create an XML file. But within that XML file, you can also do things like include files with it. So if you want to include an application within that file, you can include it. And then, the good thing about this is the way you apply them. If you want, you could actually send this to a user in a USB drive. All they need to do is double click on it and it will take it over from there. So
Okay.
it's something that you can deliver in a lot of ways. You can put it on a network share that people can just go download it, double click on it. You can send it as an attachment in an email, obviously depending on the size of what you've put in it. If you want, you could deliver it via SCCM. You could deliver it via Windows Intune if you're using Microsoft Cloud. So you can deliver it through many methods because all that's needed to do is just double click on it and it takes it over from there. And we'll probably like show a short demo of how that works as we go on with these whole series. But that's just one thing to point out, that because I think it will be unfair to mention what the current state is and not mention what is going to start happening, in the next 1 year, 2 years going forward, things might start changing from what we are talking about today. Not confirm that it's going to change, but things might start changing. So, okay, let's move on from here. So let's cancel all this and let's go. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about operating system deployment using Configuration Manager. Obviously, it's one of the features that Configuration Manager provides for us is the ability to do automated deployment of operating systems on a large scale in an environment. And one of the first things that we need to mention is this, is that before you even begin to do OS deployment, you need some preparations. So that's the first thing that we need to mention, is that don't just go and start trying to deploy operating system in config manager. If you have config manager, the first thing you do is you need some view preparations. And the main reasons why you need this preparation is if you don't do this preparation ahead of time, things will get messed up as you go on. So things that you need to start preparing for the moment you decide and say, I'm going to start using config manager for OS deployment, I'm going to start testing, is, for example, things like how you're going to manage your drivers, how you're going to manage your reference images. So things like that, how you're going to manage updates. So you need to plan all this, because otherwise it could make your life like really, really messy going forward. So for example, like talking about maybe reference images to begin with, what you normally have in environment is this, in a typical environment is you have this bunch of machines that you need to deploy software to. So let's make this guy smaller and let's copy lots of them. So you have all these machines, you need to deploy operating system to them. Now, let's say these machines happen to be the same hardware model. So let's say all these machines are Lenovo 440p. That's the hardware model. So that's what you use in your environment. So what you typically do is you have one machine, you install Windows on it, you install all the Windows updates on it, you install the core applications that are going to be used by all these machines. Again, what do we mean by the core applications? Because all these machines are not going to be used by the same people within your environment. Maybe the guy using this works in sales and he uses Salesforce and some other applications that this guy down here doesn't use, because this guy works in IT and of course he uses a bunch of applications like Putty and Win, SCP. He uses like all this bunch of applications that this guy in sales will never use. So the thing that has to be in this reference image, or sorry, yeah, in this reference image, which we're describing now, will have to be the things that are core to everyone within your environment, within your infrastructure. And does anyone want to give an example of what that will be? So who wants to go first? Abdul, you want to go first for that? So if Abdul, you're responsible for building, for handling OS deployment within your environment, and you have to start from scratch. You're like, okay, first thing I need to do is I need to get a reference image that I will use for my deployment. What are the things that you include in that reference image? You have to put Windows on it, of course. Whatever version of Windows you're using in your environment, you have to make sure that you've patched it fully, because that will reduce your deployment time. So what else will you put on it? What are the core things that you put on this? You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
I think it depends on the scenario that you wish to follow.
Yeah.
Basically, for me, I think deploying vanilla image,
Mm-hmm.
only or deploy the OS.
Mm-hmm.
and each department or each user can select the application that you need to install.
Yep, that's one method to do it. That's absolutely valid. That's one method to do it, where you just deploy the vanilla operating systems, make the applications available on the application catalog of SCCM, and people can go to do whatever deployments that they want to do from there. So that's one valid way to put it. But let's say in a situation where you want to create like just general reference image, that even like the reference vanilla image that you're giving out to users. Here's the thing. So it could be like little timing, you know. Some of the reasons why we do these things are not because they can't be done via other methods. Some of the reasons why we do them is to reduce deployment time going forward, to make the user experience more smoother. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so maybe you know that Salesforce, for example, maybe they have like this client, and you know that the prerequisite for that client is, or the prerequisite for that client is Visual C++, the distributable 2012. Now, again, you can just put this on the application catalog, and then when the user clicks and says, I want to install this Salesforce GUI, you have a prerequisite, so it installs this one first. But you know what that will translate to the user? What that will translate to is longer deployment time. Because now, rather than deployment taking maybe 5 minutes for the Salesforce GUI, now it's going to take maybe 8 minutes because now it has to install the prerequisite first and then install the Salesforce GUI. But let's say if this prerequisite was already included in your reference image that you've deployed, that makes the time of deployment shorter. Or what do you think, Abdul? Or what does anyone think? What do you think? Like, how would you do it like in your own environment? Would you rather include, because for example, if you look at many applications that you look at, a lot of them as a prerequisite of this Visual C++ redistributables, and there's a lot of different one of them. It's one that a lot of applications use.
Well, it might vary based on the company that you're working for. Like, I mean, if you're working for a company that's got a whole lot of money and they overshoot their hardware requirements by a lot, then it wouldn't really matter if the IT department had some of the
Yep.
sales applications and so forth. But if you're working with a more economical company that is more, numbers driven in terms of budgetary restraints and so forth, then you
Mhm.
definitely have to kind of use a slimmer down image, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's right. But in terms of like what you mentioned in terms of um, it doesn't matter if someone in IT has the application that's used by sales, even though it's not using it. So if you have a security team, they'll probably tell you no, absolutely no way. Because by installing the application, you've just increased the attack surface for that machine. So if there were to be a vulnerability in the application, now the amount of laptop machines that you have to patch has increased, or the amount of um, um, the surface that can be attacked to get into your environment has increased because you have software installed on a machine that even though it wasn't used, but the fact that it exists on that machine could potentially increase the attack surface for that machine. And it's kind of like the same thing that we do, like in terms of if you look at many administrators going via the route of using Microsoft Server Core rather than using the full GUI. And the reason is you have all these GUI elements that you never use. And by having those elements there, you've actually increased your attack surface. And actually, like if you look at what Microsoft said is that majority of our patches are targeting all these GUI elements that people don't actually use on their servers. So like, why not just create like a server core deployment where we actually take out all these GUI elements and then there's less patches for them to install. So if there's a vulnerability in a GUI element, it's not on your server anyway, so you don't have to worry. And then they are coming out with a much more newer one this year called Nano Server, which is even smaller than Server Core, and then reduces the amount of patches that you have to do, like day in day out. What's your thought about that? So if a security guy is like, yeah, that may be right that we may not care hardware requirement wise, but security wise, that's a headache for me Because now, rather than having to worry about we need to patch 2 machines, now I'm having to worry about we need to patch 70 machines. What do you think? Because that's kind of discussion that we need to have, like here. What do you think? What do you think, Taiwo? What's your thought?
Well, I think it depends. I mean,
Mhm.
in terms of operating system, well, what I would do in this scenario would be, find out which application everyone's using,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
install it also on the reference computer,
Hmm.
and then deploy it to all computers. And if anyone needs additional software, they can go into the application catalog and do stuff.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, what about Eldorado? You've been quiet. What's your own thoughts on this? So absolutely, it doesn't mean that all thoughts are that any thought is invalid. No. So all it's just doing is figuring out conversation because these are the kind of conversations that you may need to have in the future, with someone who knows. So what's your thought about this, Eldorado? What's your opinion, thought, ideas?
I think it would be a better idea to assign each end user just the application that they require.
That difficult? Yep, absolutely agree. So like normally, like what if I were to talk about it, what I'll probably do, what I would do, is for example, I'll put all the versions of Visual C++ in my reference image, and the reason for that is because just a lot of applications use them. I've worked with deployment. We have seen a lot of applications use this stuff that there's no point for me trying to delay them till later because there's it's just widely used. So I'll install all Visual C++ with distributable. Maybe some of the things that I'll probably install, again, this is not absolutely necessary. It depends, like what you've mentioned also, like what everyone has mentioned, is maybe something like Silverlight. And the reason is I'll probably be using application catalog, and all my users will probably be using application catalog. So application catalog requires Silverlight prerequisite. So why delay it till later? I'll probably put Silverlight. Some of the things that I won't push will be Flash. Some of the things that I won't put will be um, Adobe Reader. And the reason for my own reason for this is simple. It's because these applications are Java. I won't put Java. It's because these applications they, they release updates probably every 2 weeks. So by the time I release my reference image, within the next 2 weeks, it's outdated because they've released a new version of Java, Adobe Reader, or Flash. Almost every 2 weeks they create new versions and all kinds of stuff. So I won't put all these guys there. So I'll probably just put like the Visual C++. So actually, if I go to, let me bring up my computer. Let's go to Microsoft website again. And this time around, let's search for Windows 10 reference images. Okay. This was when I was trying to check. Do they have, so Windows 10 reference image, look at what Microsoft will say, or their own idea. Again, this is Microsoft idea. It's not like the golden advice. What Microsoft will say is, um, so it has to depend on each environment. Microsoft will say, put the Windows operating system, and they will say, put all the Visual C++, put Silverlight, and they say put Office. Now, the reason why I won't put Office is this. So they say put Microsoft Office because again, like for most people, you probably can put Office in this. That would be accurate to put Office in this. So the reason why I don't put Office in mine, or the reason why I won't put Office in mine, is because of the environment I work in is an environment where there's multiple locations. So we have people in France and they need the French language pack. Now I can't I can't install this office here and then have to put the Japanese language pack, the Chinese language pack, the French language pack, and put all this language pack that people will never use in there. It's a decision that's based on which location the user is in. So my deployment has to be more dynamic than that. So that's the reason why I won't put Office because I've not found a way to install the core Office module here and then during the deployment phase put the language pack alone. So the only way I do it is just make that decision during the deployment phase, and that's probably something that we'll talk about later. So that's the reason why I won't put Office is because it's a multi-location environment, and because of that. But if you're like a single environment and just go ahead, Office is a good one to put right here because what that will do is it's cutting down your time of it's cutting down your time of creating, sorry, your time of deployment. So when people actually start doing the deployment, all these applications won't need to be installed anymore, and it just cuts down the time of deploying the images. So, um, so the other thing that I'll mention is this. So you're talking about your reference image. So that's probably where you start from if you've been tasked to take over um, OS deployment within your environment. So you have to create a reference image that you're going to use for your deployment. So you create the reference image, you put in the core applications that you want in the reference image. Now, there are different ways that you can use to create your reference image. You could do it manually. In other words, you spin up an Hyper-V virtual machine, VirtualBox virtual machine, VMware virtual machine, anything. You spin up a virtual machine, install Windows on it, then you have to, go, come back, then download all the Windows updates, install it, then go, then come back, then go Visual C++, download all of them one by one, double click on all of them one by one, install all of them, then download Silverlight, then download Office and install Office manually. And then after you do that, then you do your sysprep, right? At the end of it, then you do your sysprep and then you capture the image. And then now you have the reference image that you can use for your deployment. But yeah, here's the thing. That's really boring. That's a really boring way to do this. Now you achieve the same thing, It's easy for you, You achieve the same thing, but that's really boring. What other method could you use? You could use something like so the general advice that is given, again, it's not golden. There's nothing like golden like that. So the general advice that you see people mention is that don't use the same environment that you use for deployment to create your reference image. There's nothing wrong if you do, but the general advice that people do is don't mess things up. Separate the environment that you use to create your reference image from the environment that you use to create your to do your deployment. So what does that mean? What that typically means is this. So for most people, for many people, you have config manager which you use for your deployment. So this is what you actually use for your deployment, where people will connect to this. It will download the image, follow all the task sequences. Config manager does that. But what you now have is you have another PC. It doesn't have to be something powerful. It can just be another PC on your desk right there. And this PC will have MDT installed on it. So MDT is a free application. You have MDT installed on it. We have Hyper-V client installed on it. And what people will typically do is spin up a VM here with this guy, spin up a VM on this guy, and then use this guy to create a reference image, capture that reference image, and then import it into this guy. And then you use this one for deployment, this one for creating and updating the image. So you want to update the image again, use this guy, spin up a VM, do all the deployment, install all the patches, capture the reference image, transfer it to config manager. This one is for deployment, this one is for creating the reference image. So that's what people would typically do. And one thing is that, again, you can do it manually or you can automate all these steps using MDT. So that's one other way that you can do it. You can automate all these steps using MDT. So what that will actually do is you can say in MDT, create a task sequence, a capture task sequence in MDT. And that capture task sequence will be in these steps of install Windows, install all Visual C++ with distributables, install all Windows updates. So you can do all this with MDT task sequence, install all Windows updates, and after that, sysprep, and after that, capture. So you can put all this right within MDT. So whenever there's like any, in case you need to patch this, for example, you don't need to manually be doing all this. All you have to do is um, use this task sequence to deploy a new machine, and then it's going to install all the latest updates, and it's going to do all that for you. So you don't need to worry about it. So again, the instruction that we talked about right here, this one, is Microsoft's where Microsoft will tell you how to use MDT to build your own reference image. And it's really, really good, straightforward instructions on follow these steps, add this application this way, download this one this way, and you can have everything set up this way in MDT. So you don't have to be doing this manually every single time. So I think I should probably pause here and ask. So any questions on what we've mentioned so far? Abdul, any questions at all so far?
What about SCCM client as captured from a reference machine?
So I probably won't put the SCCM client in the reference machine. Do you know the reason for that?
If I have the same site on my infrastructure,
Yeah,
I have the same site. I have one site.
yeah.
Why don't put the SCCM client in the image?
In the reference image. Good question. And does anyone want to answer that? Why not put the SCCM client in your reference image? Because typically what you do is you have this task sequence here in MDT for creating your reference image. Then you have another task sequence in Config Manager for deployment. And part of this deployment task sequence will be a steps for install Config Manager client. So what Abdul is saying is, why leave these steps? So this one will be install reference image, the one that you captured here, install it. So that will be the steps of this deployment task sequence, and install this configuration manager client. What I'm saying here is that why not just include this one and say put this one here also? Just say install config manager client in your reference image. What's the reason why you won't do that? Taiwo, you want to go for that? Why? Why won't you do that? Why put that in your deployment task sequence, not in your reference image capture task sequence?
Well, maybe by the time you're deploying,
Mm,
the client software is outdated. Uh, that could be one. Or if SCCM would deploy it for you automatically, is
mm,
there I don't, well, that would be another reason why I won't install it on the image because
mm.
SCCM will be doing the work.
Yeah.
Those are the two options. Maybe um, by the time I install it on the reference image,
Hmm.
there's an updated client, so that becomes outdated.
Yeah.
Those are the options I can think of.
Yeah. Those are good reasons. Absolutely good reasons. There's one core reason that I'm looking for though. One particular core reason why not to do that. You can, but there's a core
Um,
reason.
I want to ask you here,
Yeah.
does uh, do the sys prep will clear all the applications installed on that machine?
No, it won't clean applications.
Oh,
No,
okay.
Sysprep will not clean applications. No. Yeah.
Could it be okay? This is just like a guess because if you install configuration manager
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
that means that reference computer is going to be registered on SCCM.
Most likely.
Yes, but
Yeah.
but it's just a reference computer.
Yeah.
So, but that's another because if it's just a reference computer, we
Yeah.
don't need the computer registering with SCCM.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, here's the core reason. Here's the core reason for that is that there's something in the Microsoft world in Microsoft Active Directory called the security ID, the SID. Right. We all know the SID, right? The seed. They call it the seed, security identifier. So you create an object in Active Directory, a computer object, a user object. That object has a security identifier. That security identifier is unique to that object within that domain. if you create a user account or a computer, if you create a computer object called client1, and then you delete it, and then you create another computer object called client1, those objects, as far as Active Directory is concerned, they are two different objects. Because even though they may have the same name to you, to the domain controller, they have different seeds, they have different security identifiers. Therefore, they are two different objects. So SCCM functions in a similar way. The SCCM client has something called the GUID, Globally Unique Identifier. When you install the SCCM client on the computer, it generates a globally unique identifier that's going to be used to identify that client in SCCM. So if you install it here, you've just created a lot of other work for yourself, because Microsoft has a whole lot of steps that you have to follow to clean all the unique parts of this client up so that you won't have duplicate grid. Actually, let me just bring up the note that they gave us in class. Actually, let's bring up this note. Let's go to where they talked about installing clients. So installing the SCCM client, and they talked about where is the configuration manager, client agent, client settings. Oh, okay, deploying the client agent, but not deploying. Let's scroll up where they talk about the different options that you have. So one of the options that they mentioned, you see, Mac computers. Look at this. Um, look at this. This is like some of it's a similar procedure to what was mentioned. It said failure to follow this procedure will result in multiple computers with the same configuration manager ID in the site. What are they talking about? They're talking about if you decide and say, I'm going to put config manager in my VMware template, which is kind of like the same thing as your reference image, because you have this image that you're going to deploy to multiple computers. Like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea to put my configuration manager client in my VM template. They're like, hey, hold on. If you do that, you have to follow these 6 steps to clean it up. To prepare the reference computer for imaging, complete these 6 steps. Otherwise, failure to follow these 6 steps, you have clients with the same globally unique identifier showing up in config manager. Now you have 300 machines with the same GUID in config manager, and you have to delete them and start again and uninstall them. So Abdul, that's the reason. So you can, if you're ready to go through these 6 steps, you can. But again, why create extra work for yourself? Why not let config manager undo that step during deployment rather than put it into reference image?
Okay, great.
Yeah. So that's the reason. So there are some things that again it's kind of like a balance of stuff. So you look at the reasons for me when if I'm thinking about it, the reasons for me to take a step out of deployment, the deployment process, and put it in the reference image process would be the main goal for me would be to reduce my time of my deployment time, because I want to reduce. It's always a goal of every config manager guy, right? Our goal is always reduce the time that it takes for a machine to be brought into an environment and the machine to start to work, right? It's kind of like what everyone wants. Machine arrives, within 5 minutes, the machine is ready for work. That's why we use VM templates. So it's one of the goals. So if I can notice that I can take something out of the deployment process step and put it in my reference image, and it will not increase the amount of work I'll need to do in the future, then I'll do that. But if I notice that if I do this and now the step I need to rectify that is going to increase the amount of work I need to do in the future, then I'm not going to do that. So it's kind of like a balance, like what we've all mentioned also, like before. It's kind of like a balance of seeing which one will not increase my work later, which one will reduce the time that of deployment. So again, this is like the step that you normally do. So actually, we could just go ahead and try to do like the reference image one. So actually, let's bring up our config manager environment. Actually, let me start up another machine. I have lots of machines here that I can start up. Let's start up HTTPS 192. You may hear a lot of noise behind me after I start this guy up. uh, mm, Okay, let's start
How
it.
many hardware servers do you have at home?
Three.
The electric bill was with going through the roof.
Sincerely, yeah, I know it doubled like in the past. Yeah, there we go. It doubled in the past few months. But it's kind of like the pain of an IT guy. The thing is, you know, as I know, Taiwo, you know, it's painful for you when you're not testing all this stuff. You want to test all this stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. One thing that I've actually been exploring is using the cloud servers. So like using Microsoft Azure and using so I have like some cloud servers that I created on Google Cloud the other day. But one thing I've noticed about Azure is they seem to be up to me now. They seem to be on to me now. Because the last time I tried to create an Azure trial, it didn't allow me. It failed.
Oh,
If I use the same phone number, it failed the phone verification. It said contact Microsoft support. Now, when I used a different number, then it allowed me to continue. But then when it says enter your credit card details, if I use the same credit card, it failed. So basically they are on to me now. So if you yeah, so basically you can't keep creating multiple trial accounts because I was like, actually, I could get rid of my servers now and just be using Azure trial for all these labs. But then Azure are like, nope, you can't. So now that's like, so I'm having to give up on that. So now I am trying Amazon Web Services, but Amazon Web Services is just very limited in what they give you for free. And Google Cloud is good in what they give you for free, but I'm not used to it at all. So what options? What do you use for your labs, guys? What do you use? Do you use cloud servers, your own personal machines?
uh, well, I was using what's it called? Well, I've got two servers at home, but I only switch on one. The
Mm,
other one is just backup. Um, I have an account. I have an MSDN account with
yeah.
my so I get £200.
Wow, that's nice for Azure.
Yeah.
I
But
tell you, yeah.
it's not because I was playing around with Azure AD, so
Yeah.
I was getting charged on that. So
Were
now,
you?
yeah, I don't understand. Well, I've not actually played around well with Azure, but one thing I noticed is within 5 or 10 days, I'm out of credit
Wow.
and I can't do
No,
well.
here's the thing. Do you switch on your servers
I,
24/7 or do you shut
yeah,
them
but
down when you finish?
I shut them off. But the thing is, um, I created a lot of blob. I created a lot of Azure AD. I think those ones are still eating up my credit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to delete them.
Ah, that's interesting.
So I just abandoned it for a while now because well at the moment now
Yeah.
because I've got I need to design a proof of concept
Y-
environment at work. So
Yeah.
that I'm using now. So that
That,
makes it easier.
that's interesting. What about you, Nicholas? What do you use for your lab? Do you just use your computer or what do you use?
Sorry. For like a lab environment type
Yep.
of thing?
For
Oh,
for practicing, yeah.
the nothing. Essentially, I've tried to use the Microsoft lab environments, but
Yeah.
they seem to work for about 5 minutes, and then after that, the mouse click-throughs just stop. So I've done literally no labs.
What about okay, yeah, have you tried the Microsoft TechNet Virtual Labs?
Yeah, that's the one that was having problems with the click-throughs. They kept timing out after about 5 or 6 minutes.
That's interesting. And that's really interesting. What about you, Abdul? What do you use for your lab? And Eldorado also. What do you use?
Yeah, I have a virtual environment. I'm
Nice,
using yeah VMware 5.5, I guess. Yeah.
nice, nice. Yep.
But it's still I have some short in resources. I have only 16 GB of RAMs, and to do some lab like this, you need at least 30, 32
Yeah,
GB
yeah, it's true.
on storage.
Yeah, it's true.
But so far it's good. I'm using it.
Yeah. But what
Yeah.
about one thing that you can use to get around the smaller RAMs if you can get a SSD? because then that will make,
SSD.
yeah. So it will make it simpler, so you can have less RAMs for your servers, but the speed will still be like way much faster.
Mm. Okay, let me think about it.
It is expensive at first, but you will reduce it later. What about
Uh-huh.
you? Yeah, yeah. What about you, Eduardo? What do you use?
Also using VMware environment,
Um, VMware vSphere or VMware Workstation?
VMware workstation.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Also have 16 GB of RAM. Like,
Nice. Nice. Nice one. Okay, so there we go. So we have MDT here. So again, just go to Microsoft website, download MDT. So this starts talking about creating the reference image. Go to Microsoft website, download MDT, double click on it, go next, 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 install MDT. So they have it, the latest version of MDT that they have is MDT 2013 update 2. So just Google that, Google MDT 2013 update 2. Update 2, download that on a standalone computer, go next, next, install it, and it's done. So after installing it, you get something here called the deployment workbench, which is basically where you do all your stuff. First thing you need to do is you need to create something called a deployment share. So it's really easy to create. All you need to right click on that and click new deployment share, and you create a deployment share. So there's one here that I've already created. So you give the deployment share a name. So actually, let's just cancel this. So if I go new deployment share, um, the path, let's call this MDT test. I'm not sure if I have that path. So what's the share name that I want to call it? So because again, remember that what MDT will be doing. Let's bring up a paint, a fresh whiteboard. What MDT will be doing in this case is, again, I have a single computer here. This is my single computer. So there's my host. On this computer, I have the Hyper-V, a Hyper-V VM. So let's just call it um, Hyper-V VM1. That's my Hyper-V VM. And this is my normal computer. So this computer is called Client 1. What MDT will be doing is MDT is an application installed here. But under MDT, I'm sharing, I have a deployment share, something called a deployment share. So let's call this // client one backslash um, uh, deployment share $, because it's a hidden deployment, it's a hidden share. So what happens is this Hyper-V machine, so under this deployment share will be all the applications that I'm going to be deploying. So all the applications will be stored here. The operating system files will be stored here. So this Hyper-V VM will basically connect to this deployment share here and be able to get all these applications, all these OS files, and deploy them within the VM. So that's just what it's doing. So the deployment share is basically the share that this guy can connect to. That's all that means. So that's all it means by the deployment share. So it's not a complicated thing. It's simply a shared folder that will contain all your. So, and if I go ahead and click and say, okay, let's call this again. If I call this MDT test with the $, and go next, share location description MDT test. Let me just put test in front of that. Test deployment share. Next. So you can ignore these ones for now. We'll get to them later. And next. And then it creates the deployment share. If I go back to my C drive now on this machine, what you probably see is this. What you probably see is under here, I have this folder here called MDT test. And if I open that folder, you see it has different folders, subfolders. So like applications. So any applications I put in MDT, that's where they will be located. And this is a share that is shared out of this computer. So if I go under computer management and I go under shared folders, I'll see this folder here. So what that means is the Hyper-V machine or any other machine will connect to that share and be able to download anything that's in that share and deploy it as I want. So that's all that means. So, okay. So going forward, okay. So now I have created this deployment share. Click finish, and then I can see the deployment share here, MDT test. So this is basically creating my reference image. So again, the very first thing you probably need to do is import your operating system. So maybe I've downloaded a Windows 10 operating system let's go to the C drive. I probably have it somewhere else apart from the C drive. Because I have this other, I have the F drive. So under the F drive, under ISO, no, under ISO. Yeah, here we go. So this is the latest Windows 10, the Windows 10 1511. I can double click on it to mount it, and I can just point to that mount location, which is the H drive, and say, I want to import an operating system. I want to import it from the H drive. So what it wants it, if I go H drive, I think I have the wrong one. Yeah, I think I have a language pack. So I need to unmount that. I need to eject that. And I need to go mount the correct one. So that's just the language pack. So this one maybe, this one looks better. So under the D drive, I need to specify the D drive here and go next. And then it gets whichever version. So this is, again, this is just Microsoft naming this wrongly. So it's not the technical preview. This is the Windows 10 Enterprise 1511 codenamed Threshold 2. So you can go next to that and just import this operating system into that deployment share. And what will happen, or what's happening in the background, if I go under my C drive under MDT test, under operating systems, that's what it's doing. It's importing it. It's just basically just copying it here. So it's not something complicated going on. Again, deployment share is just a shared folder that all these things will be stored, that whatever machine you're going to be using will be connecting to and downloading the files from there. That's all that deployment share is doing. So it's the same way that you've imported the operating systems. When this allows you to go forward, it's the same way that you go and right-click applications and import the application. So if this one finishes now, but I'll show you like a good thing that is really really useful if you're going to be doing this. It's really really useful. Look at this link here. So let me share this link with you. Um, let's go to Windows 10. Um, Look at these instructions. You'll like this. Mm, mm, so it finished installing the applications. So if you want, actually, if you follow Microsoft documentation, so now the operating system is there. I can rename it if I want to proper naming. Windows 10, 1511, threshold 2, and just leave that. So under applications, if you actually follow the Microsoft instructions that we talked about earlier, this Microsoft instructions here, if you actually follow these Microsoft instructions about creating a Windows 10, this is a really boring one to follow, sincerely, because what you have to do is you have to download all these Visual C++ one after the other, and then after downloading them, you have to go to MDT and go right-click, new application, application resource files, specify the name of the application, where the application is. Now, this is boring to do. This is a more better way to do this. So not this Microsoft instruction, this instruction here. I'll put the link up on the community page. So download all Visual C++ versions in one go. Look, this is really cool, sincerely. It doesn't look cool now, but this is really cool. You download all the Visual C++ versions in one go. So how does that work? So this link here, actually, let me just put it on the share page so you can have access to that. I'll put it on the community page also. Really, really nice script by this guy. So download the script and the XML file. So I go to this location. I have to use Internet Explorer here because Chrome is really troublesome, and Chrome will give me error messages and won't allow me to download that. So I have to use Internet Explorer to download that. There we go. So let's download, let's copy this. So this guy's blog, Michael Nystrom, really, really good instructions. Open this. And this is the way that we should be thinking of doing stuff, you know. So first of all, download the XML file. So actually, if I just go download here, so look at that. If I go save as, I'll save this to download folder. Let me just call this um, test. Yep, and I'll download this zipped file there in that folder. So if I go to download folder and I go on that test folder, which I have here, and then I can see the zipped file. So I'll unzip it or I extract it to the same location. So this file just contains an XML file and a PowerShell script. Okay, so let's edit the XML file to begin with. So he has this XML file, and basically what this would do is at the end it's going to download all this, every single one of the Visual C++ versions and put them in a folder all by itself. So if I edit the PowerShell script, and then we'll run it. So come on, PowerShell, come on, come on, you can do it. There we go. Yeah, and there we go. And then we have um, this one here. And actually, I don't need to edit the PowerShell script because what we need to do is if I close this, close out of this, and go back to the guy's page. So what we need to do is this one. Execute the script from an elevated PowerShell prompt like this. Execute the PowerShell script, download file, point to the XML, download folder, point to the folder that you want. So look at this. If I go copy the instructions and open PowerShell, run PowerShell as an administrator. Go to the folder where I downloaded all those scripts. So cdc users David download folder, and I have the test folder, and yep, where the scripts are. So actually I can just put the script directly in the test folder. So I can copy this script from here and just put them directly in this folder. So I don't need this two anymore. So I have the two scripts here. So get downloads one. So let me copy the command line from the guys page. Really simple and straightforward. So the only thing I'll modify is the download part. So get download.ps1, download file, download.xml, download folder. I won't use C downloads in my own case. So I'll use C downloads. I'll use, no, I won't use C download. I'll use C users David, what's it called? Downloads, then the test folder, and I'll create a new folder under this test folder. So again, let's go back to this one. So you like this when you see the result, and I'll just call this Visual C++. That's what I'll call the folder, and I'll say that's the download part I want, underscore Visual C++. Yeah, that's all I need to do. Enter. this script could potentially run my computer. Do I want to run? Yeah, I want to run it. So run and look at what's going on. Now, I don't have to do anything else. This script is actually downloading all the versions of C++ by itself. Everything will be in this folder in a few minutes time. I don't have to go right click, download, right click, download, right click, download. That's it. All the versions, x80, 64 and 32 bits, everything done. And then you can use other PowerShell scripts to basically import everything from this folder into MDT. So you can see how you can increase, like you can make like your work easier rather than having to do this manually and downloading it and double clicking on it. Now within a few minutes we've downloaded everything. Within a few minutes there's actually like a PowerShell script that I wrote for that because I didn't like the ones that I saw online. So I actually wrote like one PowerShell script that will actually just add everything that I want into MDT for me. Okay, yeah. So it's just using like the normal one. So it's not like a huge script or something like that. So I could actually just use this one. So go to this one. So let me bring up PowerShell ISC again. And look at that. Everything downloaded, all done. I go PowerShell ISC. Again, I'll put the links to all this in the on the community page. And come on, come on. Yeah, and this one, what this one will allow me to do is um, I can specify, all I need to do is change the part of the application and it will import all these applications, all the Visual C++. It will import all of them for me within a few minutes time. So I don't have to go about importing them one after the other again. So again, I've just downloaded everything, going back to the machine. So rather than doing all these processes, I could go, no, cancel this. So I don't need all this. So everything, I think I've already downloaded them here also, and they're under VC++, and that's all the versions. And if I want, what I can do is go, okay, import one of them. If I can go right click, new application, call this application with source files, publisher, Microsoft, application name, install Visual C++ 2005 x86 version none, language none, source directory, go to the location of where the script downloaded everything for me. I can point to that location and point to that folder, right? I can go next. It's giving me that name. I go next. The command line is the same one that I think all of them, all those versions that they use. It simply mentioned the name of the application /q. So if I go to this folder, I have the 32 bits. So just this one /q will do the silent deployment. And I go next and next. So yeah, after I click next and it finishes, I can see here where it says view script. So I can click on view script here. All I need to do is copy this one and modify it for the others. So I can change this one and say let's make a word wrap so it makes it easier. So I can say change this one and say the part of the application. What is that? So F Visual C++. So this is the right part. So I'll leave that one and I'll change this one to 64. And basically that was the thing that I did. And I can do this one. So this one instead of 2005, I can change to the next folder, which is 2008. And destination folder. So I'll just change the names also. So change that to 64. Change this one to 86 2008. Microsoft installed this one 2008, and I can run this. Run as administrator, and I can run this as an administrator, and basically what that means is that instead of having to do all these steps manually, really boring tasks, if you have like all these scripts already covered, you could finish everything. So for example, like this one that I have here, which is I think the one that I used for the earlier one. Um, yeah, I think this one will work. I mean, if I run it and it fails, there's no issues there. So probably fail because of the deployment share name, because this one is saying it's using deployment share name DS002. So I can go tools and replace it, or edit, replacing script, and say I want to replace DS001 with DS002. And like, so install that. Yeah, and I can run that again. Just to say run script and see the reason why it failed, and then just edit it that way. Um, yeah, because it wants me to. I imported this one, so run that to import it. Probably know one of the reasons why this one is failing is because let's run this one and see what happens. See where is deployment MDT. So what's that? So we go to the C drive, OS deployment. Ah, I see. That's the reason why. So I'm pointing to the wrong PS provider. So I need to change that to point to the right PS provider. So that's not the right one. So again, going back to this one. So that's the right PS provider. So that's why that one is failing right there. So I mean, probably have to remove PS drive. Yep. So just keep troubleshooting till you find the answer. Parts to the targets. Um, so what's the error message now? Ah, okay, yeah. I know the reason now. So the reason is because of the verbose. So I could close this one completely and just go around these guys. So let's go down. Let's run that again. Oh, okay. I know the reason why it failed is because again it's because I'm editing an already existing script. So the part I'm pointing to, I don't have a folder called applications. So that's why it's failing. So I don't have any folder called applications. So I could either just go create a folder under this deployment share, call it applications. I could go um, applications, and I have application name here, an application name. I don't have Microsoft there, so I could create a new folder here, call it Microsoft, and finish, and then run that again and see if that fails again. And if I go back, run it again, yep, and now it's imported it. Now, if you have like all this kind of scripts ready, and then if we go back to deployment toolkit now, and if I refresh this, it's imported all that for me. I mean, that's apart from the troubleshooting, it's within minutes that you can have all this ready. And once you build all this, everything is ready. You have your new task sequence, you have task sequence ID 001, or let me call it ref 001. Task sequence name Windows 10 ref image. Next, um, make it a sys prep and capture, yeah, or you can just make it a standard task sequence. But then there's a step there for capturing. So select the operating system that you want. Don't specify any product key. Do not specify an administrator password. Now you've created this task sequence here. Then you go under properties, and under here, just edit the steps that you want. So like, um, again, it's going to take care of your Windows updates. You can add the applications that you want to install, the Visual C++. You can add them here, and this is the sysprep and the capture phase of the image. And what that means is this: once you have this ready, anytime you need to update your reference image, you don't have to be doing manual installation. All you have to do is start up a VM, just run this task sequence, and it's going to update it. Change whatever steps you want to change. After making the change in that step, run the task sequence, you get your new reference image, import it in the config manager, you're good to go. You don't have to do all these steps manually anymore. I think that's probably where I'll probably, because that's a lot of information that, that we've thrown out. I'll just leave it open to any questions that you may have regarding what we've mentioned so far, or in terms of like maybe general operating system deployment questions for the rest of the time that we have. So, any questions, guys?
I have one.
Yeah,
Well, during OS deployment,
yeah,
um, where you have to specify administrator's password,
yeah,
you didn't specify one.
yeah,
Well, I've always specified,
yeah.
but what happens if you don't specify?
The
Do you
vid-
get a blank admin account, which I think Microsoft has stopped since XP, or what happens there?
so you mean when so because the
If you
reason
don't-
why one of the reason why it doesn't make any difference if I specify a password or not is because I won't actually interact with this deployment in any way.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
for example, it's going to be a deployment that will build, for example, it's going to install the operating system, install the applications that are specified, right? After doing that, it will install all the Windows updates. It's going to sysprep it and it's going to capture it. So I have no interaction at all.
Okay. Okay. So this is, oh yeah, that's good. This is
Yeah.
just a reference.
Image, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So, but then the other thing is that actually, like in many environments now, because if you think about it security-wise, the administrator account is a security risk. So many environments we actually disable the administrator account or
Okay.
use a more complex solution like Microsoft. local admin password solution, which is a more complex solution that will create random passwords for administrator account.
So who manages that then?
Active Directory.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's this solution called LAPS, Local Admin Password Solution by Microsoft. This one.
Is it a new stuff? Because I've not
I
heard
think
of
it was new, like maybe as at last year. So when did they release it? So that was 7/7/2015. So what it's going to do is, basically it's going to generate random password for each admin account on the systems, and that random password will be stored in Active Directory.
Okay.
Because if you think, because actually, like this, really popular with the security guy. This was one of the things that our security guy got us to disable. It's a huge security risk. Because
Right.
if I can get that admin password and it's the same on all machines, I can opt from machine to machine.
Yeah, that's
So I can opt from machine to machine and up on the CEO's machine and copy any files I want to copy by compromising a single computer. And as an admin in your environment, here's another good security mindset. Always view your client devices as hostile devices because because you have no idea, you know, what people are, you know, are downloading, what people are clicking on, and and so you have to prepare in such a way that if one workstation is compromised, the attack that could be launched from that single workstation is limited. So you can't go from one workstation and up onto another workstation. But with local admin with the same password, you can do that, except you start configuring Active Directory policy to disable things like that. So you can disable it using Active Directory group policy, where you disable local account up and stuff like that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other question regarding OS deployment? Everything we've talked about. Yeah, carry on, Abdul.
Yeah, yeah. MDT will not. I mean, it doesn't have the capability to deployment the image to the client.
It
Only
does.
prepare the image.
It does.
It does.
It does. So MDT does have a way to deploy the image to the client, but here's the way it's gonna work. For example, like this question has been even been asked, like, okay, now that we have this one now, how do we deploy this to our Hyper-V machine, right? Because we're gonna deploy this to this Hyper-V machine, right? The reference image. So how do we even do it to our Hyper-V machine? So here's how we do it. So I can right click on here on the deployment share that I've created. After I've finished every setting I want to set, I go on the um, update deployment share. Yep. Then I go optimize boot image. And what this will do is it will create a boot image for me. So the boot image will be under my MDT tests. So I go under C, the deployment share, under boot. So all I need to do is I'll get the boot image that is created after I finish creating it here. I'll copy it, right? And I'll go to my Hyper-V machine. I'll right click on my Hyper-V machine under settings and I'll say use this boot image. You get the point, right? So I'll say to the Hyper-V,
Yeah.
use the boot image created by MDT. And that boot image has the setting to say whenever you finish booting, connect to this machine that has this name and proceed from there. So MDT can actually do the deployment also. But where it's limited is you have to use the boot ISO, right? The CD. So
Mm-hmm.
what is more popular is people will take the MDT boot ISO and they will put it into WDS for Pixie boot.
Yes.
So people can Pixie boot from there and then it will connect them to MDT.
Mm-hmm.
But again, where you're lacking is you're lacking in the backend distribution infrastructure of Config Manager.
Yes. Yes.
Because once you leave the realm of you're using a single site, now there's trouble. Because now you have to manage all these different MDTs and WDS.
Okay. Now we have MDT.
Yep.
Okay, which will help to prepare the image
Yeah, reference image. Yeah.
and deploy it manually. But if you want to use to put the image over the network in WDS,
Yeah.
But
WDF.
again, if you want to distribute this in, to the rest of the sites, you need to use SSM.
Yeah, but so what you tip,
Distribute it, I mean.
yeah, what you typically do is it depends. If you already have SCCM, there's no point in using the MDT to deploy anything. So the only thing you're using MDT to do is to create your reference image.
Yes.
So you create a reference image there, you import it into config manager, and then config manager handles all your sites.
Yeah. Okay.
So the only thing you're using it to do is, hey, Service desk comes to you and like, this deployment we're doing is out of date. We need the latest Windows updates in this deployment. You don't have to go manually and click, install the update and then pause. And then after doing that, you have to use DZIM to capture the image. You don't have to do that. You can let MDT do all that for you. Once you set up all these things, all you need to be doing from time to time is maybe modify one single step, run it again to install the latest updates, and it will capture everything. So it will do all that for you. So it's kind of like an automated process. There's even, the blog of this guy that I went to, this guy called um, Michael Nystrom. So there even is one that will actually not only, the one where I have to create the Hyper-V machine, right? And I have to use the boot ISO, point it to the boot ISO, right? There's even there's even this if I go PowerShell is king and go building a reference image factory. So what this one will basically do, what this guy is basically written, is it will take care of everything for you. You even don't have to create the Hyper-V machine. It will create the Hyper-V machine for you. It will point the MDT to the boot ISO and just do everything for you. So all you have to do is go do this and you're done. And you come the next day, your reference image is ready, fully updated, everything is ready. You import it in config manager, you're good to go. So I'll do a demo on this one very soon. So I'll do a YouTube video on how to use this one because this is what I use in my environment. I use what this guy has done. So if you look at my current deployment here, this is what I use because it even takes the automation a step further. So rather than just using MDT, but now you still have to import the boot ISO, right? And put it into Hyper-V, right? And then start the VM. So this one will even take care of all of that for you. So the whole point is we're separating out the deployment, the reference image creation, and the deployment infrastructure. So our deployment infrastructure is SCCM. MDT is for free, so we can use it for creating our reference images.
Okay.
Is there anything that's not clear at all? If there's anything that's not clear at all, just let me know.
Okay. MDT can be installed on a client OS.
Yeah, yes. So it can be installed on the client OS. So in my environment, I have it currently running on a Windows 8.1 machine. So, and also
Mm.
remember that if you have a client OS, you have the right to run two Hyper-V client machines because you can install Hyper-V client on a client OS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have Windows 8.1 or Windows 10 client OS, you have the right to run two virtual machines of Hyper-V client. So that's what I'm using. So I just have the Hyper-V client on it, and I have MDT installed on it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, David, this is Hangout number 15.
Ah, is it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. Sorry. I will modify that. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will modify that. So here's the point: is that again, this is something that you don't have to use the exact method that we've talked about today, but it's something to consider in terms of you separate these two out, and then you also drive towards how to automate this process. You don't have to be creating your reference image manually. It's something boring for you to do as an administrator. You know, you create it manually, you install everything manually, and then after that you boot into a boot image and then use DZIM to capture that. You can use config manager to do this also, but then it could get messy where you're having the infrastructure that's deploying your images also is the one that you're using to create the reference images. So it's not as if you can't do it. If you believe that you can manage it and you're okay with that, there's absolutely nothing wrong in using that method of using config manager to do it that way. But the most people like this guy here, Michael Nystrom, and a lot of top config manager guys will advise, not every one of them, but some of them will advise that separate out your reference image infrastructure from your deployment infrastructure. And one of the reasons why you don't need to worry is because you don't need to worry about licensing. MDT is free. It has more features in terms of OS deployment than config manager. So you can use it to create your reference image without fear of anything. And you have Hyper-V client that is also free if you have Windows 8.1 and Windows 10. So you can just use that, create your reference images, bring them into config manager, and config manager handles deployment. Again, when we get to the deployment side of things, you see it's not just config manager that handles deployment. You can expand your functionality by using, let me show you one that is really interesting. Let me show you this one that I was testing today. So this is config manager. This is not just config manager. This is config manager integrated with MDT. So you see I've integrated config manager with MDT, right? And now look at this. Look at this feature and tell me if this is not interesting. So if I go test one, I think I have it open. No, it's not open. So let's connect to test one and let's boot this guy up. So so this is my deployment infrastructure, right? This is separate from my other infrastructure. So I need to stop this guy and say boot from the CD. So don't boot from file, boot from DVD. Move up, apply the, okay, let's start that. Yep. So I boot it from the DVD. So just look at this whole process and see, just get what you think about this. So this is something that uh, you can't achieve by using just config manager for deployment by itself. You achieve it by using config manager integrated with MDT. So if I go next, so you'll probably just take us to a quick wizard because I'm using uh, the UDI wizard, which I'm learning. So it goes through all this process. But there's one particular part that I would like you to see once it starts, and then I want you to see that particular. Has anyone heard of the DAT tools before? DAT, the DAT tools. Anyone? Taiwo, have you heard of DAT tools before?
No, not at all.
What about Abdul? DAT tools.
No idea, man.
Yeah. So look at this. So okay, yeah. So this is config manager that I'm using for this deployment, right? But it's integrated with MDT. So let's go to config manager. Let's see what's happening. So if I ever actually just open MDT in the background and I go refresh. So let's carry on. Let this guy quickly complete this whole step. And what I can do is I can monitor this deployment away from this client machine. So that's like a really good situation if you have branch offices that you have to look after, or even if you have like clients that are managing um, their own operating system deployment. So it's something that you can give to your service desk guy. So a client is like, I'm having trouble with my OS deployment. Maybe you've trained your clients to that level. They could actually just monitor this deployment right from their machines without having to go see the user or see the client. This guy can complete really quickly, then we will see that feature. So you have monitoring enabled there, and it tells you which step it is. So you can see still it says running, step name, gather, percentage complete. That's the total number of steps. So whatever steps that you see where it failed, you can see exactly the step that it failed, in your task sequence list, it's telling you the step I'm currently running is the gather step. So if I go to the task sequence, you see the step that it's running currently. Um, Edit the task sequence. It's currently running the gather step. This one, yeah, she's currently running this one. And not only can you monitor it, you see the other thing you can do with it once it completes this one. Um, come on, come on. Yeah, so because I'm using UDI. So Taiwo, remember the one where we're talking about user-driven installation? Remember?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember.
when
Yeah.
we're talking about role-based application deployment.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just leave this one like this. Okay. Okay, next. Administrator password. Let's set something. There's no need. I'll just leave that. Remember this one.
Okay.
So where you can set role-based or maybe different
Oh,
applications to
okay.
install for sales, different application to install for support. Yeah. So for example, I'm like, okay, the guy's in IT, is in global infrastructure services, so install these applications for him. I click next. Look at this interesting thing right here in this corner, right? Can you see this one? So
Mm.
let me minimize this and let's bring this one up. Look at this, right? Now let me go to my HCM infrastructure, bring up the MDT monitoring and go, okay, maybe I need to refresh this. Yeah, okay, here we go. I can see the application here. Gather step, percentage complete, current step is step 20. Right click on it, go under properties. Now look at this, that's remote control. Look at that, Taiwo. I'm connecting to this client machine that is doing deployment.
Oh, okay. So you can actually control it remotely.
Exactly. And I'm connecting to it, I'm monitoring it remotely, I'm seeing what's going on. This is not remote desktop. This is using the DAT tools. So I'm basically like monitoring what's going on with this guy. I can see which step it is. I can see if it failed, which step it failed. I can, if it failed, I want to see what's going on the screen. I can connect to it using this method. So
Can you start it from remote from using the data tools?
can I what?
Can you restart the remote computer?
I'm not sure. Like for example, I know I can click finish here, and then it continues with the deployment. So anything that you can do in front of the computer, you can do from here. If I want to
Okay.
restart, I guess you mean I can press F8 to bring up the command line tools, or maybe shuts down or something like that.
Maybe it crashes or something, and you need to do maybe a reboot.
Yeah, you can. So
Oh,
because if it crashes, it gives you an option to say restart computer. So you can click on restart computer, and then just again go back to your monitoring space here and monitor it again till when it comes back again, and then you can connect to it again.
all right.
So it's like so again that remember that was why I said in the beginning, if you do the Microsoft training, they will teach us, which I've done, they will teach us about SCCM for deployment, right? And SCCM for capturing and all that. But actually in the real world, you can get a better experience. It's not that you cannot use that method, you absolutely can, but you can get a better experience or some better functionalities if you integrate it with MDT. So that's the whole point. Is better functionalities, better feature sets. So any questions, Abdul and Taiwo and Eldorado and Nicholas? You've been quiet. Any questions at all?
Yeah, no questions. No.
Yeah,
No.
Hello, Nicholas and Eldorado. Hi.
yeah, it's Eldorado. Because I want to find out like, can MDT cover deployment of Office for two sites? Like if you have two sites with 50 users in each site.
You can, but then it's a management issue because now you have to manage two separate infrastructures. It's not advised. Once you go beyond one site, the recommended way is go for config manager. But if you can't afford it, why not? Only that you have
Okay,
to
so
manage three infrastructures.
okay, so it's actually possible. Like,
It is possible. Yeah,
if you have to. Okay,
it is
okay.
possible. Yeah. Only that now you have to manage them separately. But well, there are ways you can make it easier. For example, I can create this deployment share, and I can um, export this deployment share over to another computer if I want. But
So
then
the computer in the other side, like
yeah,
the
exactly. But then because most people don't use just MDT for the deployment, they use if you want to use MDT for deployment, they use either you use SCCM for deployment or you use MDT with WDS. So what most people will do is they will also have WDS. So now you have to manage separate WDS server on the other side. Whereas config
okay.
manager will undo that for you. If you look at config manager, the way it handles that for you, if you look at my distribution point, for example, if I go to my distribution point here, under site server roles, under my distribution point here, all the things of installing WDS, importing your boot image, it's a single click of enable Pixie support for clients, and then put my configuration here and okay, and it does all the rest for me. And then after I do all this, all I have to do is go to that boot image, and under the boot image, I say properties of the boot image, make this boot image available. So it's just going to put the boot image on WDS by itself. So under one of these, um, um, yeah, under data source, deploy this boot image from the Pixie enabled distribution point. Okay, and it does all that for me. So
If
So Config Manager provides a more solid backend distribution infrastructure, especially for a multi-site environment.
okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. How about Nicholas? Any questions from you?
No,
Yeah.
not really.
I hope
Everything's been
I hope
pretty
we've now
helpful today.
overloaded you with with information today.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of stuff covered.
Yeah. But the reason why I mentioned all this, I tell you the reason why. The reason why I mentioned all this is because I remember Taiwo was involved in my learning process also, and Taiwo will remember how frustrating it was for us, right? When we started reading about, oh, you could get better functionalities with MDT, and we were like, remember Taiwo, how confused we were. We're like, how do we even do this, And
Yeah.
it looked confusing, right from the beginning. It was like, and the reason for, I think, for that was because we're not told right from the beginning that, hey, you can use this method that Microsoft is teaching us in the courses, but this is how you get better functionality using this other method. So that wasn't presented. So that's the reason why I'm presenting this other method that usually is not presented. Usually you have to get them by going through a lot of blogs and going through a lot of technical articles and a lot of documentations and articles by different people to get them. So that's the reason why we're pointing out like this one. Like for example, like um, many people will start out probably creating the reference image manually, and then eventually you start learning, oh, we could automate it with MDT and it won't cost us anything. Oh, and by the way, we could use something like this PowerShell is king solution to even automate it beyond what MDT can provide. So basically, you're like, okay. So it depends. So it could be that maybe at the basis of your knowledge at the point, you could start out manually, but be aware that you could potentially start playing in your lab at home, start testing. How could I automate this with MDT? Oh, and also if you're planning on automating with MDT, keep doing that. There's nothing wrong in doing that. But also start looking forward in the next 6 months or 7 months, I would like to be able to even automate this whole process using something like this. So that's the reason why we presented this. So it doesn't mean that creating it manually is wrong. It's not wrong at all. Yeah. Okay, Ben. Thanks very much again. So we'll see you again next week. So that'll be it for today.
David?
Yeah. Hello, Abdul.
Yeah, I have one question, but it's not, today's topic.
No problems. Carry on.
It is okay. It is in ECCM cross-forest implementation.
Yes.
Okay, all the discovery methods will be applicable for the remote forest.
So forest discovery is definitely not applicable.
No, I mean, no. Forest discovery, it will not be about. I mean, I have to add this forest in the
Yeah, manually.
manually,
Yep.
but I'm talking about the rest of the discovery methods,
See,
like network discovery, heartbeat. It will be applicable, I guess.
I'm not sure of network discovery. Because again, remember that you have an
Yeah,
account.
network.
Yeah.
No. Network discovery doesn't. No, I mean, even in the same forest. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not using this. It is disabled.
Yeah.
As you know, it will discover all the devices are connected to the network.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, I can add IP address range in the boundaries and.
Yeah. I believe you can.
Mhm.
I believe you can because the discovery Active Directory, all the Active Directory discovery, Active Directory user system group works
Mhm.
because you've configured an account um, in the
Remote.
other forest. You've configured it in your config manager, so
Mhm.
that works. So you have to create boundaries for the other forest also.
Okay.
Yeah. So remember that all the other steps work. So automatic discovery works, and even automatic client push works.
Okay.
An automatic client push uses boundaries.
But if I have SSM 2007 is
Yeah.
implemented on the remote site, I guess I have to use the group policy to for site assignments with a new one.
SSM 2007, I'm not sure because I've never ever
No,
ever
no, no.
tested it.
I mean SCCM 2007 is already implemented on the remote
Yeah.
forest.
Yeah.
To update the registry, I have to use a group policy and mention the site code for the new
Because
forest.
a
For
SCCM
them.
2007 client will not work for SCCM
Yes, yes,
2007 infrastructure. So what you
yes.
probably want to do is you can force, when you're deploying the SCCM client, you can select the
Force them.
option to remove any existing client. So it's going
Okay.
to remove the SCCM. So you can use automatic push also. So it
Mm-hmm.
will uninstall any existing client and install the SSM 2012 client, which will assign it to the SSM 2012 site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can use different. So you can use the same method. So you can use the automatic method. You can use the group policy method to do the installation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that works. Yeah. Okay, man. So thanks very much again. So we'll see you again next week. So I'll put the recording up. I'll put these links up on the community page also, so that you have them in case you want to play with them later.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. So then we'll carry on later. Okay, have a wonderful week, guys. See you next week. See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, bye for now.
Okay.